Hey, good morning, guys. I'm hoping my Wi-Fi, my cell connection, mobile connection is strong enough to do a little sharing this morning. It's Tuesday morning, and I'm here for my Tuesday morning tune-up at Las Vegas Krav Maga, one of the best martial arts fight factories in the country, I think, in the world, maybe. Great school, great instruction there, great instructors, great people, great family, great tribe. Got here a little early, so I thought I'd just share what I want to talk about today, because I caught a lot of times when people see my videos or they see me speak or they see me at like doing a seminar or whatever, they ask a question around the origin of my perspective. And I thought I'd talk a little bit about that, because most of the things I talk about are just things that I've been taught or things that have been shared with me that I find to be useful and are effective. So I share them in my motivation to try to make the world a better place. Hey, Terry, good morning. So I credit a lot of my perspective. Actually, I credit a lot of who I am today to something I did decades ago called the game. And I've shared this to a few people, and it's actually inspired people to do their version of it. So sitting here this morning, I thought I'd kind of review that. So when I was officer in the Marine Corps, had already gone through college, had a college degree, all that stuff, was doing really well in my profession, doing really well in my job, my capacity, my role as a Marine Corps officer. But the more I got out in the world and the more people I met doing different things, it just became very, very clear to me that there was just a lot about a lot that I just didn't know, was never exposed to, right? And this is after college, with a college degree, right? So not 100% sure what was going on at the time to make me focus in on make this a serious venture. But what I ended up doing was I realized that I went to college really because I was told that if I did this 4-year thing, that if I went to school for 4 years, did what was needed to get a degree, my life would be better. Now, there were a lot of other details in there, but that's a summary of the instruction that I'd been given since I was a very, very small child. So because the people cared about me, and I just bought that as truth. I just bought that as, hey, you go to college, 4 years later, you will just be in a place to have a better life. And I took that as reality, and I went off and I did that. So what I decided to do, and I called it the game, was it started off with me saying, okay, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take that same amount of time. I'm going to make a 4-year commitment, and I am going to learn as much about as many things as possible to see if the same kind of theory holds true, right? If I would end up in a place where I would have a better life. So after a lot of thoughts, and I took it very serious, and here's what came out of that personal challenge. It became what I now refer to as the game, because I treated it as a game, but I treated it incredibly serious. So when I said, what's the quickest, most effective way for me to learn, in my off time? And at the time, I wasn't a big reader. I read, but I wasn't a big reader. So I said, it started off with me committing to reading a book a month, no matter what was going on in my life, no matter what was going on in my job, career, family, health. I had to commit to, at a minimum, doing a book a month. And then the more I thought about it, I realized that I added to that only nonfiction books. Fiction, if I read a fiction book, I could do that, but it wouldn't count towards my quota, my book quota. The other rules were where I got the list of books to read. And what I built then was the habit of, when I met extraordinary people, different people, accomplished people, peculiar people that struck me as being different, I built the habit of asking them, hey, have you ever read a book that impacted your life, made a difference? And they would share. And I would make a list of these books, and the more often I heard the book, the higher up on the list I would put it. And then when you read nonfiction books, they always reference other authors and other books in their books. So that's where the list came from. That's where the books came from. And then the final rule was I had a three book limit on subject, which meant I couldn't read more than 3 books in a row on the same subject. So if I was reading about business and I read 2 books on business, and reference another book on business, reference another book on business, the 4th book had to be about something other than business. So I built in this rule that would force me to be multidisciplinary. That's what I thought I was doing. So I created this game, and then to show you how serious I was about this effort, the first 3 books, because of the rule, right? The first 3 books I read were on reading, how to read, reading comprehension, speed reading. And then I changed the subject and came back and read another couple books on reading, right? Because I said, if I'm going to commit to this for 4 years, no matter what, I want to get something out of it. Now, my motivation was partly that if I realized, I did the math and realized that if I did a book a month, 12 books a year, 4 years, and I only remembered 10% or less of all that information I was exposed to, it would be an exposure to an enormous amount of information. I also remember I heard a stat at the time that most people, the 80% of people don't read a nonfiction book post their formal education. If they only go to high school, once they leave high school, 80% of people never read a nonfiction book. If you go to college or grad school, post that education structure, most people never read a nonfiction book. So I thought to myself, this would put me in a very small category, of people in terms of exposure and knowledge. So I did this. I took this on. The first year, I read a book a month. The second year, I read 2 books a month. The third year, I read 3 books a month. The 4th year, I tried to read 4 books a month. I just couldn't pack it in. But I maintained a book a month minimum for years. I went way beyond the 4 years. So it was hundreds and hundreds of books. And I ended up reading books about things all over the board. I've read a dozen books or more on quantum physics. I've read books on life science, on biology, obviously on business, on psychology. I've read autobiographies of people like Pythagoras. I read books on people like the Pythagoras and his life. I've read about Isaac Newton. I've read about math. I've read a book about the number 0. I just read books, physics. I've read books about things I would never normally have read, and I made myself read them. I read a dozen books on neuroscience and things related to brain stuff. That stuff became very, very interesting to me. I've read tons of books on ancient civilizations. I've read books on a lot of things, right? And it made a difference. So I'll start off with, I've told this story to a few people, and here's something that, was startling. So 12 months after me starting that game, I doubled my income. No new degree, no new certification, no new, what I credit to happening was I changed, which changed my perspective, which changed what I paid attention to, which changed the conversations I had, which changed who I had the conversations with, and it took me to a different place. 18 months after starting that game, I tripled my income from that point. That's staggering when you think about it. So this game was fundamental to changing my thinking. I really think it laid the groundwork for my current and modern day perspective. I forced myself to be multidisciplinary in thinking, to look at things from different perspective. One of the things that happened as I went through all of these books, I would see an idea of a concept in one subject, but I could relate it to a similar thing in a completely different subject, right? And I was like, I saw the similarities in structure and form of things in one particular subject matter, how it was related to something in a completely different subject matter, and I found that to be fascinating. And then what I did over the years, it started to, when I saw these patterns or these I used to just call them laws. They're not I used to just call them laws. I'll just give you the language I used in my head. So I call them these laws. And when I see these things that started to repeat themselves, the same notion and same idea, I just decided to live life as if that was some type of universal law like gravity, and see how it played out. And it changed my life completely. Completely changed my life. My perspective was broadened, and it had a lot. So I wanted to share that idea, because I don't think you can do that game. Oh, and some people wonder how I could consume that many books. So, especially just me, I would still consider myself in the beginning an average reader. Of course, the more you do things, the better you got at it. And at some point, I became a very, very quick and good reader. But so I remember some days when life stepped in and was busy with work and life and stuff. And I would realize that it's the last day of the month, and I'm in the first or second or third chapter of a book, and I realized, oh my gosh, there's just no way I'm going to be able to stay up all night and finish this book. Then what I would do is I'd get in my car, I'd drive to the bookstore, I'd get an audio book, I'd get in a car, I'd put in the audio savers, and I'd drive around all night until I finished that book. I mean, I just made a serious commitment to no matter what. And I think one of the biggest personal adjustments from a psychological perspective to myself was being able to make that type of commitment for such a long period of time. To be able to commit to this 4-year effort and to make it happen. And then I got better at it. It became a little bit fun. Became more game-like, and I got ahead of the game. Sometimes even the first year when I was trying to read a book a month, a book might go real fast, and I just start the second one, so I got ahead of my quota. And the next thing you know, 4 years had passed, 5 years had passed, 6 years had passed, but my perspective was broadened. And it showed in my professional life. So in my professional life, when I ended up in business development, sales, and that type of thing, I found that the metaphors I used, the examples I used, the references I drawed from were non-typical. They were just from crazy places. It wasn't crazy to me because I'd just been exposed to all these different disciplines, so a lot of things made sense. I had a little bit of information about a lot of different things, and a lot of these patterns were repeated across disciplines. So I thought I'd share that this morning, and might inspire you to do some version of that. It definitely is empowering. Oh, one thing I did realize that what came out of that game that was even more impressive to me, and because I've done a lot of analysis, I've looked back on that as a life-altering decision. There have been a couple of things in my life that have been fundamentally life-altering. The game is significant. The game is definitely significant. There have been a couple of others, a handful that I'll probably share it later videos. But you know, one of the most valuable things that came out of playing the game was I realized that I became very optimistic. I became a much more optimistic person about everything. I became much more empowered. I became much more confident. I became a lot of things, and my actions were altered as a result of that. The type of people I tried to engage as friends, as counsel, as mentors, I just wouldn't have done it had I not done some of those things in the game. So with that, I hope that there's something in there that lights or feeds a little fire you have in you to be more, be greater. You know, I'm always on that mission. I think that's fundamental to who we are. And I think personal empowerment is critical to any legitimate path to personal satisfaction and or personal happiness. And I can probably I could probably explain that from at least 5 different disciplines why that you should adopt that as a personal philosophy. But I could probably go back and talk about from a biology, chemistry, just all that stuff. So optimism, I view optimism, by the way, since we're talking about that, I view optimism not as something that's innate in personality. I view it as a learnable skill. So I treat optimism as a tool. Just like people go to school to learn to increase their communication skills, I think it is in people's extreme and severe, and in some cases life-critical advantage to start to teach yourself to be optimistic. And I don't mean just assume everything is good and view everything as being good. That's not what I mean. Optimism is a little bit deeper than that. But when your habits become optimistic and you habitually are optimistic in your perspective and what you hunt and seek out in this universe, you live a different life. You live on a different planet where the rules are different. I can just, maybe I'll talk about some of those examples later, but you're in the same world with, you know what? As the ancient texts say, and many people way smarter than me say, and I love it because it means so, it's so clear to me now that it's true. It gives you a way to be in this world, but not of this world, to be transformed. That is profound and true and powerful and of a worthy pursuit. All right, guys, it's almost time for me to go to class this morning. I changed my personal schedule to go to Krav Maga, my craft school on Tuesday mornings. That's going to be my morning class, and I'll call it Tuesday Tune-Up. And I'm going to hit it pretty hard and heavy at the beginning of the year and probably become a gym rat of sorts. I used to be that way with this school. Now I love the school and the instructions, but I've just not been making it a priority to do the multiple classes a day and things, to become obsessed as I was before. And I'm going to be obsessed for a little while because it shortens the learning curve, increases the output, increases the gain, and makes you feel good. All right, guys, have a great Tuesday. Hope you're having a good day so far, and I hope you got something out of the game. For some of you, I hope you create your own life-changing game. Adios.